Hi, welcome to episode 51 of Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. So this week is, a wrap up of my last week of school, and it's been a very full week, and I'm recording this intro after the fact, and I can say that it's been full and rich, which means that there's lots of good things, and it's been richness, but it's also been just like super busy, and we are at the end of the week. So thanks for stopping by, taking a listen, and I hope that you are inspired to check out some of the podcasts that I have listened to, and you are inspired like myself. Hey, there's a good one on Thursday by Dave Burgess that you need to listen to, and it's a very timely, seasonal, festive podcast. So that one, I just put it in there. So listen through until you get to my Thursday recordings with Dave Burgess. All right, peace out, and here we go.
I'm Angela Kelly Robeck, host of the Empowered Principal Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood to take in podcast content, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these selfie videos. You can follow me on Twitter at FreshAirAtFive or check out my website, briancarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected.
Hey, PLN, Monday, December 13, 2021, out for Fresh Air at 5 this morning. Forecast said rain and sleet, and I'm glad it's not, because it's very much more comfortable this way. All right, things are going along well. We're into episode 51 of this podcast of mine, and so this segment will go into episode 51 that'll come out this Friday. So yeah, I can't believe that I've walked and talked for a whole year, and there's been some changes a little bit of how I do this and for myself and what do I get out of it. So it's been good. Thanks for listening. All right, this morning on my opening podcast, I listened to the Lasting Learning Podcast, episode 196 with Dave Schmittou, and he brings us the first of a series that he's going to be talking about the educational mind field, MIND field episodes, and episodes that provoke us and get us thinking and even disagreeing if we need to, and sharing those thoughts. So thanks, Dave, for opening this conversation up. Topic one today is standardized tests are not the problem, and are not a problem. And I came into this episode just looking at the title, and like I said a couple episodes of mine ago, don't judge a podcast by its title. And so I listened, and I agree with you that standardized tests are not the problem. And so take a listen to what he has to say, take a listen to what I have to say, and I would agree with you, Dave, that standardized tests in and of themselves are not the problem. They are a way of us being able to measure ourselves against a standard. When we are measuring students against students, that becomes a problem. When we are getting our standardized tests from the vendors of the curriculum and are, doing things like that, that becomes a problem. When I'm buying my weighing scale for my weight loss program from the company selling me the food, that becomes a problem. Appreciate it. So very good. And I agree. One more thing for December 13, 2021. Continuing my thoughts on standardized tests are not the problem, out of episode 196 of Dave Schmittou's The Lasting Learning Podcast, Minefield of Education series that he's bringing us. I would agree that standardized tests are not the problem. I grew up in an era where we had provincial exams here in my home province of Alberta that I grew up in, and other places had provincial exams. It was a way that we could make sure that we had consistent assessment across many classrooms. And that's, I believe, important. When I was a grad student, I taught undergrad organic chemistry labs. I was a lab TA and worked and had 2 sections of myself. And we had like 38 sections and about 19 lab instructors that worked. Came down to it at the end and said, how do we know that the assessment that I've given my students in my room are consistent with the assessments that are being used in other rooms? As a TA, I was given the opportunity to create my own quizzes that I could use to assess my students, and how I graded labs was up to me, compared to another grad student that maybe didn't care the same way that I did about the learning going on in the room, which they should. If this is what their job is, they should. And this gets back to, what do we do as educators when this is our job to do assessments properly and well? How do we normalize grades from my class to the teacher's class down the hall? How do we do those kinds of things? And then that's a problem, because then we start comparing my practice to your practice, as opposed to making sure the kids can meet the standards that are placed before them. Dave, thanks so much. I hope this makes sense a bit, and I look forward to continuing listening to this educational minefield series. Happy day. Bye. One more thing for December 13, 2021. I just listened to episode 63 of Overthrowing Education with Batsheva Frankel and Batsheva. Thanks so much for bringing us this episode, because I have been wondering how to get this to happen in my classroom space. Okay, not really, but it it crosses your mind about how can we stop students from cheating, and how can we get to hear and see what they can actually do. I think cheating partly comes from the fact that we use the same materials over and over again. So a way that could happen for this is to not use the same materials year after year after year, or, and have unique assessment ideas, ways of going about doing that. One way that we do that in our spaces is I teach online, and we use the Moodle platform, and we have a question bank of many questions for a specific topic. And when students write a test, a multiple choice test or something like that, a written test, we give them a random set of questions out of this question bank, which helps in the moment from the side-by-side cheating, and it can help with, maybe a little more authenticity of what they can know and do themselves in a moment, as opposed to what, anyhow. So that's about testing and multiple choice tests. And is that a great idea? Not necessarily, but in my system and the way that we do that, it is a necessary thing. And so yes, I really appreciate your ideas about this. And authentic assessments. In my media classes, we have, I don't give tests, but I give authentic assessments based on, creative works that they have to do. Create this, make this, demonstrate this, and things like that. And, for them to have to do it with a camera on is one example, using like Screencastify to show that they're doing it themselves. That's one way of getting around that. Okay, that's it. Happy day. Thanks for the bumper at the top of your show. Peace out. Hey, PLN, Tuesday, December 14, 2021, out for Fresh Air at 5 this morning, and my headphones died. And my cell phone's not charged, so I'm recording this a little bit earlier than I typically would in my walk. I haven't finished the whole podcast yet, but got to get things done and engage where I can. So before the battery dies, I am recording. And this morning I'm currently in the stages of listening to the Burned In Teacher podcast with Amber Harper, and she has on one of my favorite people in the world, who is Jake Miller, and Jake Miller Tech on Twitter. You'll know him, and Jake is on the Burned In Teacher podcast. And Jake, you know what? Over the past little bit, I've seen some vulnerability from you that I didn't know was there. It's been there, but I haven't heard you share it before, talking about the tension with passion and responsibility and the things that we have to do, and how your position as a tech coach was cut in the district, and you're back into the classroom. I heard you back in the classroom, but it didn't really click to me that that was not your first choice of what you would like to do in your space. So that's for me honestly the same thing. I am in the position that I'm in right now, and I'm carving out my passion area within that position. But is it my first choice to be doing maybe online learning? And it provides me an opportunity, and then I got to be a helping teacher and found real passion and joy with that. But then that got cut, so I understand some of those feelings about you have to go back. And so honestly, I appreciate you sharing that, because we see podcasters and we see educators, and the tension between doing this thing on the side that really, really brings us joy, and the thing that we need to do in our day that really, really should bring us joy because we signed up for it. And, so that's important. So take a listen to episode 124 of the Burned In Teacher podcast for all the details that Jake and Amber talk about being burned in and burned in board. All right, peace, bye. More thing for December 14, 2021. And Jake, I think you said it makes you smile when I do my one more thing. So this one's for you, about the comments and content you're talking about with Amber Harper on episode 124 of the Burned In Teacher podcast. I listened to the last part and my battery didn't die, so I'm really thankful for that. So I get to listen and now record my thoughts as, you talked about doing all the things and how you've been guilty of trying to do all the things and encouraging people to do all the things, but we can't do all the things. And your experience is that you can't do all the things, and you have to figure out what the tool is in your space that allows you to do the main things, and how are we doing so. And I've been a big Google Classroom fan, seriously, for many years, and I have trained Google Classroom and pushed Google Classroom, and I think it's a wonderful tool for a synchronous classroom setting that allows you to put your content somewhere. It's like in a real-time classroom management system, and I really dig that. But what is also important is that it's good for asynchronous. So if students are away, they can stay on it. Is it full-blown learning management system? No, but it meets a need. I've got a teacher who is considering Seesaw seriously, but we're getting started on how to do that, and I have never done that myself before. So Jake, maybe I need to talk to you about some strategies about how to do Seesaw so that we can do it effectively, kind of like some of the things that you can do in Google Classroom, but that it's only one platform that the students have to use and that they can use in their classroom space. So that's my big aha this morning. It's kind of funny when you have these ahas that you go, you know what? Maybe I am pushing too hard. And so that's something I got to work on for myself. All right, thanks, Jake and Amber. I appreciate the conversation so very much, as you know. And I got to get going now. Have a happy day. Peace out. Bye. Hey, PLN, December 15, 2021, and out this morning for my walk, and it is a crisp 2 degrees Celsius, not snowing, not raining, and I'm thankful for that. All right, we're halfway through the week. It's Wednesday here, and I got work today, exam supervision tonight, and a bunch of activities going on with my students as we wrap up the week before winter break. So I'm looking forward to that. As I step into that winter break, I'm thinking about how that transition is going to go and what am I going to do. Are you thinking about that same kind of thing? what's going to happen when you stop? Are you going to keep going with other things that will occupy your time? Or are you going to slow down and get some rest? And I'm hoping for a bit of both of those things, because, you know, there's been things I've been putting off and things I'm looking forward to doing, and also looking forward to getting some rest and probably having, you know, a nap during the day, things like that. Not giving up my Fresh Air at 5. So I might not be up at 5 next week, but I'll be out getting some exercise, walking and listening to podcasts. All right, this morning, what prompted me to say what I just said was episode 207 of the Empowered Principles podcast with Angela Kelly Robeck. And Angela, thank you so much for your podcast. Your podcast is a new to me podcast, and I have not listened to your podcast yet before. And we are part of the Educational Podcast Network with Chris Nessie. And so we are fellow podcasters in this network, and I am listening for the first time to your podcast, working through the ones I haven't listened to before on my journey here in the next little while. So I'm glad to listen to your podcast. You talked about creating balance in this episode. And people, we need to figure out how to create balance, how to have balance. Something that struck me, Kelly, or Angela, that you said was that balance is a feeling, and how do we feel about that and perception. So people, take a listen to what Angela has to say in her episode and dive into that yourself. It takes work, and that's important because we are worth it. All right, peace out. Talk to you. Bye. One more thing for December 15, 2021, episode 197 of the Lasting Learning Podcast with Dave Schmittou talks to us, and he brings us an educational minefield topic that he has started this small series that he's going to go on for a while about things that are challenging and maybe controversial. And this week's topic is college is overrated. And Dave, thank you for giving us some background about that statement from you and why you're saying that and that you think that. And it's curious how we have our education system that takes students and grows them to be graduates of high school. And that we say that that's an important credential, but there's many that don't even get that in our society that go on to make a contribution in our society. Beyond that, those that we graduate, we're like, okay, what are you going to do next? And that's a legit question, because what are we going to do with our time when we leave high school? Are you going to work? Are you going to contribute to society? How are you going to do that? And one of those routes is through college and university, and how we can grow our skills and our understanding and our learning to be impactful humans in our society. I believe that it is important to have higher education and to keep on learning, but the methods and means of doing so and getting there, that's up for debate. I have myself a bachelor's of science in chemistry, and then I have a master's of science in chemistry as well, and I am not using the skills directly that I learned in the chemistry lab in my everyday, but what I am learning or using every day is my ability to problem solve and think. So that degree, that master's, allowed me to problem solve and think. It also gives me a credential for being able to teach chemistry now as a high school teacher. And so without that, I wouldn't be doing part of the job that I'm doing now. So it's kind of a funny thing how we need to pay more to keep learning so we can have credentials, so we can do the things we enjoy. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. Bye. One last thing for December 15, 2021. Breaking news, people. I'm an Adobe Spark guy. You know that. I talk about that. I've been on We Got Tech, the podcast with Eric and Nick, and talking about Adobe Spark versus Canva and all that goes along with that. And on Monday morning, I jumped into my computer and I was going to go make a creation with my favorite creation tool, Adobe Spark. And I jumped up and said, Adobe Spark is now ... And I went, oh my, what is it now? It is called Adobe Creative Cloud Express. So my initial visceral response was, no, I can't believe it. Are you actually kidding me right now that you're changing the name and changing the whole thing? I had many questions racing through my head. What is it? What's going to happen? They say it's going to be the same thing, but now there's more tools attached to it. Fantastic to a point, and I am a big Spark believer because of the simplicity of the tool and what it allows entry level and beyond to do with this tool. I also like Canva. I started to use Canva myself. You might have recently seen me on Teachers on Fire with Scott Nunes and Tim Cavey talking about Canva and how Canva is a great tool. And so how are we going to get along here? So my initial response was that I can't believe this is happening. But beyond that, I started to look at it and had some questions. So I called our vice principal of digital learning and I said, can you believe it? He said, Carpenter, sounds like you're turning into an old man and not embracing change. And so I was like, okay, I guess so, right? Had my students dig into it yesterday with me and look at the similarities and differences. We found some. We found that there's a paywall in places where there wasn't before with Adobe Spark, but Adobe Creative Cloud Express looks like it's going to be able to do a lot of the same things. Concerned about the structure of the payment, but we'll figure that out. So that's the breaking news right here from Carpenter about Spark. Okay, bye. Hey PLN, it is Thursday, December 16th, 2021. Happy birthday to my daughter, Bree, who turned 15 today. And we got to go out for breakfast this morning. And then we all went to school. And it's later on that same day. So I'm out delivering papers now and getting that wrapped up so we can go for birthday dinner. So yes, happy birthday to my daughter. All right, this morning, or this afternoon as I'm listening, because I didn't go out early this morning for my walk, I listened to the Easy Ed Tech podcast, episode 142 with Monica Burns, as she brings us 13 ways to use emojis that might surprise you. And I really like your list of 13 ways, Monica. Fantastic usage of that. I've been using emojis in Google Classroom assignments to highlight parts of the assignment or to put a visual to a word in the body of an assignment text or something like that, or also in the title at the very top. You can put it in there to kind of draw attention to it so that students see it. If you have a question of the day or something like that, you can use a question mark or some kind of symbol that shows them that, hey, this is the same thing that we do all the time. It's kind of like your folder idea, but this way it is what students are seeing in their Google Classroom. So that's my tip on how I use emojis, and great to see. Take a look and listen at what Monica has to say about 13 ways that she uses emojis, because it is so good. Happy Thursday. Talk to y'all soon. Bye. One more thing for December 16, 2021. I just listened to 3 questions, highlights from 2021 with George Koros on the Innovators Mindset podcast. And you know what? It's so very important that we remember those that have made a difference in our lives. And there's many teachers that have made a difference in our lives, and to verbally say it out loud, so good. And George, thank you for bringing us highlights from the 3 questions series that you have done over this past while, and since Because of a Teacher came out. And it's so great to hear these stories and be reminded of the great things that are actually going on in schools around, and to for us as teachers and educators to call out the teachers that have made a difference for us. All right, thanks so much. Talk to you. Bye. One last thing for December 16, 2021. You're like, why are you laughing, Brian? Well, I'll tell you why I'm laughing. I just listened to episode 12 of the Dave Burgess Show with the one and only Dave Burgess, who brought us an episode called Is Santa Claus Real? Okay, seriously, I started listening going, Dave's bringing the fire. He's going to bring something, but I don't know what it is. So I kept on listening. Take a listen to this episode. Do take a listen. It is fascinating to hear him talk about Santa Claus and how Santa Claus is real. So don't not a believer. I dare you to listen, because he's talking about energy and what we bring into our space as educators and people in the world that we live in. All right. Thanks, Dave Burgess. Appreciate it very much. And with that, that's it for Thursday on Fresh Air at 5. Peace out. Bye. Morning, PLN. It is Friday, December 17th, 2021. You've made it to Friday. I've made it to Friday. And it is the Friday here in my district before the winter break, Christmas holidays, that time off. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm thankful that we are here today. I've got another full day ahead, but that's what we do. It's our job to have a full day at school. And but we are going to walk into winter break this afternoon, and I'm looking forward to sleeping in. I probably will put off walking early in the morning like I'm doing, maybe when the light's up or things like that. We'll see. My son still has to get up for work, so I might just go for my walk in the morning and get it done. So I'm still staying regular and consistent in this. All right, this morning I listened to an episode that came out earlier this week, and it's Shooks and Giff, Season 5, Episode 7, as Jen had on co-host Mike Frankfort, and Mike is a friend from Jen's childhood that has become an educator like herself, and they work nearby and have stayed in contact. And this episode, Mike and Jen, fantastic. You guys bring a perspective to stop motion animation with the work that Mike is sharing, and I'm hoping it's Mike, because if it's not Mike, I'm saying his name a whole lot, and I apologize, Mike, or Mark, maybe Mark? Okay, now I'm confused, but I'm not the only one that gets names wrong and has struggles. Jen did in this episode as well with Cam Mechanicans, and big shout out to Cam Mechanicans, yes! And Jen, you got her name right at the end when you did that little outro piece. So yes, great to hear, and the reasons for stop motion animation. That's the thing that I've been missing. Like, how do you integrate it? How do you talk about it and get students going on it? I've done stop motion animation, but it's been pretty clinical. Okay, at the end, there's some great resources that Jen shares. There's the Christmas Advent on social media thing, and her course, sketchnoting. I'm trying to get one of my teachers to take it, Jen. We'll talk to you. Bye.
As my one word for 2021 is appreciate, I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific podcast episodes in the show notes for your learning convenience. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can also be found on Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here, and on the Education Podcast Network, Podcasts for Educators, Podcasts by Educators. I hope you have a fantastic day and get some fresh air before the day is out, and take care of yourself, because you're worth it.